Uh, Good morning. We were dealing the murder in the cathedral. While seeing the same, we have seen early life and some of the things related to life and the writing of the T.S. Eliot. Now we have to see some of the critical concepts. T.S. Eliot is one of the greatest of English critics of the 20th century. His criticism marks a complete break from the 19th century tradition and gives a new direction to literary criticism. His literary concepts are scattered all over his 500 and odd essays and reviews. His theory, like the objective correlative, then dissociation of sensibility, fusion of thoughts and feelings, the classic and romantic, these things now today we have to see in short. The objective correlative, the phrase objective correlative was first used by Eliot in his essay on Hamlet. The phrase has gained such a wide popularity that a writer named Wimsatt and Brooks writes about him that the phrase objective correlative has gained a currency probably far beyond anything that the author could have expected or intended. In the opinion of T.S. Eliot, emotion can best be expressed in poetry through the use of some suitable objective correlative. He himself defines objective correlative as a set of objects, a situation, a chain of events which shall be the formula for the poet's emotion so far. When the external facts are given, the emotion is at once evoked. For example, in Macbeth, the dramatist has to convey the mental agony of Lady Macbeth, and he does so in the sleepwalking scene, not through direct description but through an unconscious repetition of her past action. Her mental agony has been made objective so that it can as well as be seen by the eyes as felt by the heart. The external situation is adequate to convey the emotions, the agony of Lady Macbeth. Instead of communicating the emotion directly to the reader, the dramatist has embodied them in a situation or a chain of events which suitable communicate the emotion of the reader. Similarly, the dramatist could devise in other dramas like Othello a situation which is suitable objective correlative for the emotion of the hero in the this drama. Here, Hamlet is an artistic failure of here the external situation does not suitably embody the effect of the mother's guilt on her son. The disgust of the Hamlet is in excess of the fact as presented in the drama. The phrase objective correlative has been discussed threadbare by a number of critics, and most divergent views have been expressed. Thus, the Clint Brook, the phrase means here organic metaphor. For others, it is vehicle of expression for the poet's emotion, and for the Austin, it is a poetic content. It is a poetic content to be uh, here used as a verbal expression. This is the short information about the objective correlative. Then we will turn towards the dissociation of sensibility, or we may say unification of sensibility. Another of the popular cliches of Eliot is the phrase dissociation of sensibility and its opposite unification of sensibility. The phrase was first used by Eliot in his essay on the metaphysical poets of the early 17th century. By unification of sensibility, the T.S. Eliot means a fusion of thought and feeling. Fusion of thought and feeling. Uh, a recreation of thought, such a fusion of thoughts and feeling is essential for good poetry. But poetry results when there is a dissociation of sensibility. That is, the poet is unable to feel his thoughts. Eliot finds such a unification of sensibility in the metaphysical poets and regrets that dissociation of sensibility set in the late 17th century. There was a split between thought of feeling, and we have not yet recovered from that dissociation. The influence of Dryden, Milton has been particularly harmful in this respect. This is the short information. Then the another point, that is a fusion of thoughts and feelings. In this essay on the metaphysical poets, the T.S. Eliot explains how the fusion of thoughts and feelings takes place. The Tennyson and the Browning are poets and they think, but they do not feel their thought as immediately as the odor of a rose. A thought of your thought to drama was an experience. It modified his sensibility when the poet's mind is perfectly equipped for its work. It is constantly amalgamating disparate experience. Ordinary man's experience is chaotic, irregular, fragmentary. The latter fails in love or reads. These two experiences have nothing to do with each other or with the noise of typewriter, of the smell of cooking. In the mind of the poet, these experiences are always forming new wholes. Eliot does not regard Browning to be a great poet, for no doubt he has idea, but he fails to transmute his idea or transmit his idea into emotion and sensation. Merely dry thoughts or logic do not make a great poet. A mature poet can express or experience or feel his doubt as he does the odor of a rose. A bad poet cannot do so. Another aspect of the unification of sensibility is a harmonious working of the creative and critical faculties of poet. A poet create in heat in a moment of inspiration, but he corrects at leisure. The poet must create, but he must also bring the critical faculty to work upon what he has created. He must revise and polish and thus his creation into shape. A great poet must of necessarily be great critic as well, for he must constantly analyze, reject, and select. Eliot's concept of dissociation of sensibility has been far-reaching influence in modern criticism. T.S. Eliot was a classicist in literature, not romanticist, and one of his important contribution to literary criticism is that he strengthened the reaction against the romanticism and paved the way for the rise of neoclassicism. The anti-romantic and anti-humanist reaction began in the early 20th century, and its most powerful experiment in England was T.S. Home. T.S. Eliot completed the work which he began. The Romantics placed the and importance on the human personality. They believed in inspiration and refused on the human to recognize any authority outside themselves. It was this lack of artistic discipline, this failure to accept an authority, which resulted in the vagueness and immaturity of romantic art. Inspiration can result at the measure or the most in momentary excellence. Romantic art is bound to be fitful and unequal merit. Eliot therefore emphasized the value of tradition, the need and the importance of the outside authority for the poet. This is about the classics, and in addition to this, we may add the classic or the classic critic. Eliot is a classic critic, but in one most important respect, he is different from the classic critic of the past, like Dryden, Dr. Johnson, etc. These classic critics were concerned entirely with the analysis of particular work. They do not care to examine the process of creation and formulate the theory of literature. Eliot, on other hand, has own theories of poetry and the poetic process, which have been elaborated in essay like Tradition and Individual Talent, The Function of Criticism, Frontiers of Criticism, and in number of other essays. Tradition, in his essay on tradition published in After Strange Gods, T.S. Eliot writes, tradition is not solely or even primarily the maintenance of certain dogmatic beliefs. These beliefs have come to take their living from in the course of the formation of tradition. What I mean by tradition involves all those habitual action, habits and custom, from the most significant religious rites to the convention of way of greeting a stranger, which represent the blood kinship of the same people living in the same place. It involves the good deal, which can be called a taboo. Here, these are some of the points related to the critical concepts, and then while concluding this one may add as tradition and individual talent. The Eliot regards the whole of European literature from Homer down to his own day as forming a single literary tradition. This tradition is not a dead one, it continues and lives in the present. When a really great work of art is produced, this tradition is modified to some extent. However, little, a great poem or a great work of art can be possible only when the poet or the artist has a sense of his literary tradition. Great artists modify the existing tradition and pass it on to the future. With this, I would like to conclude. Then, after, we will move towards the theory and practice, that is the poetic drama, where we have to see some of the points like the dramatic poetry, poetic drama, then poetry and drama, and then after we have to move towards our text. With this, I conclude. Okay, thank you, good day.